Viewer discretion is advised as this material may not be suitable for young viewers. This may come off shocking, mystical, or far-fetching, but I want to get the story out and the world to know. There is information that must stay redacted through the details I'm sharing for security purposes. I'm blowing a whistle because I feel strongly that the world has a right to know what's going on behind the curtain and just how far science is willing to go. I was working in an undisclosed location pre-COVID for approximately 12 years, which has a lab focused on bioprocessing. Make what you will out of that statement. This location acted as a hub for a number of experiments related to rapid evolution, expanding or manipulating biodiversity through bioengineering, biohacking, and biocreation. Many blacklisted programs ran through this hub that would be considered off-limits. That's another story. In short, I was responsible for being a data bridge. I would receive and record all necessary bioinformation. This not only includes extracting samples for study, but also creating a data warehouse for our findings. We would break down each physical compound to know what the tissues are made from at a molecule level. They would do different things with this information. Cloning, of course, hybrids were a common feature to study. This ranged to whatever spaghetti stuck to the wall and whatever we had the ability to do. There were really no limits, and I don't think the average person knows just how far we can take this. From editing genes, animal and human hybrids, etc. Every now and then, our records would be delivered to a military unit. I'm sure you can guess which one. My guess is that we have these things weaponized in some fashion or another. Some were beastly things, others were small and would be more prone to dispersing unique plagues in specific geographical areas. It may sound cliché, but some of what we crafted could be scripted through a science fiction novel. We'd get our original specimens in a magnitude of different ways. We purchased most. We'd notice anomalies in the gene pool here and there throughout most species throughout the world. From what we could see, this is how things evolve. It's a simple theory, and there's more recorded science to it than what's in your scholastic books, but it can be a fascinating world to work in. My unit were common guests in the surgical center to take features of specimen for ongoing study and record keeping. This wasn't our unit's first alien autopsy, but it was my first personal experience going through it. Once you're seeing unknown creatures and essentially playing the hand of God from a biocreation standpoint, it is safe to expect the unexpected as nothing comes off surprising anymore. Sadly, I was numb to this experience where most may find it fantastical. No one for that matter was excited or acting irrationally. It was another day under the microscope. Now reflecting, I'm still processing the fact that we are not the only advanced life forms in our solar system, and the common public is so far behind in this disclosure of truth. There are people out there still thinking this is a conspiracy. It truly is amazing how a narrative, whether accurate or not, can direct an entire population's mindset and create bias, even when there's thousands of years of proof readily available. But that's another topic. The first thing I noticed about this particular event was the array of personnel. We usually don't have military identities in the room with us. We usually get what we need, record and send the information out accordingly. This day was different. Big Brother was little hovering over everyone's shoulders. Once complete, we were to freeze the bodily remains and send it off to another undisclosed location. Lying on the table, under a sheet, was not human. It did not have a human or earthly origin either. This was real and organic in nature. I'm not sure where it came from, but I can only assume it was a crash victim of some sort. With that theory, I am surprised there was only one given everything we hear about. It seems like there's more than one pilot usually, but we only had one specimen to study that day. It's some of what you typically hear. A gray body with large black eyes, almost like a bug of some sort. From what was told, these things work similar to bees, but at a very sophisticated level. Different bees play different roles in their hive. There's even a drone bee whose sole purpose in existence is to travel across the vast wilderness to find other potential colonization zones for the hive once they outgrow their current hive. So, this thing's job was kind of like that. A drone alien observing the universe to see what might be a feasible ecosystem for its colony to live in. Apparently, they've known about us far longer than we've been able to recognize them. But that's all beside the point. This alien came in damaged, with a missing left arm, a ripped-apart left shoulder, its left leg had been snapped from the shin, its body had deep wounds throughout its limbs, and its stomach had been opened from whatever happened to injure it. Its head had a blunt force trauma, and its skull was fractured in a number of places. Physically, however, you could still make out its features incredibly well. The hands were similar to ours, a little longer and skinnier, but they diffidently used their hands in a similar way to ours. People don't talk about this enough, but it smelled absolutely atrocious, like the worst punch of sulfur you can imagine, and I cannot emphasize this enough. The smell still gives me shivers and nausea when I think about it. It was that bad. People in the room were routinely leaving to vomit, then having to come back and continue. It wasn't decaying. It was a residue glossed over its body. It appeared to be an adaptation or a defense mechanism, almost like a toad or a poison dart frog excludes from their skin when feeling threatened. Its skin was grey, and interesting enough, its meat had an off-grey color to it too. It didn't have a white or red meat appearance like we're used to seeing here. It almost had the color and appearance to a slug from the inside, off-colored with a sticky mucus residue. The first incision I made was assigned to the rear neck. They wanted a sample of its spine. It didn't have a spine made out of bone. The closest thing I can resemble it to would be cartilage. It was softer than what we typically see, however, and you could cut into with ease. This is surprising to me, though. How can something so soft and flexible hold its head? It didn't seem natural, but then again, if you're in space, evidently you don't need a strong spinal system to hold up a head of that size. Next, we extracted the organs. This was an odd part of the autopsy. It wasn't complex at all. I was a little shocked by this. Yes, we peeled back the rear skull and extracted the brain, which was quite large with mass. But the rest of its anatomy was very simple. It's as if all of its evolutionary roots were targeted on the brain and the rest of the body was trying to catch up. Its mouth was small and it had a V-shaped tongue. Its teeth weren't like humans' teeth. Think of a turtle or parrot's beak, for example. It had a small set of calcified teeth, but it was one piece for the top set and one piece for the bottom set. This was the most durable piece in its entire body. The teeth were even harder than the rest of its skull. It almost resembled a shark in that way, being mostly cartilage where we find shark's teeth thousands of years later, but the rest of the shark dissolves in decay with no fossilized record. If these things have been here, or are here such as some theories predict, this may be why we find no skeletal remains. I can see that taking place with these creatures as well. They actually seemed more evolved to live in water than on land, but they were missing features such as webbed feet and hands which would support that theory. So, I'm unsure, maybe those are space-like features versus aquatic-like features. And maybe some things cross over here and there. Maybe that's also why there's so many reports of these things being in water. I can see them thriving in an underwater environment versus being on land. I digress. So after its mouth, it had an esophagus which led to its stomach. Its stomach was very small and that was it. It didn't have a digestive system, no exit for fecal matter. It appeared as if its body would literally digest and consume any and all of whatever it ate. It had reminiscences in its stomach, and from what we could tell, it had a protein-like base and other unknown elements. Its heart, if you want to call it that, was also small in proportion to its body. All of its organs were interestingly smaller than what we're accustomed to seeing here in nature that its size would suggest, except for its eyes and its brain. To this day, I have more questions than answers. Personally, I would love to study these creatures more. There's so much scanning that can be done today than what we had available then. I find myself now looking up to the stars with this core memory marinating in wonder. The capability of biological diversity is seemingly never-ending. The possibilities of creation and editing are a bit overwhelming and fascinating. There are powers to be that may use this for security interest. Although I'm a scientist at heart, I lay awake at night wanting to know what's happening down the chain of command with all of this information. Then again, maybe I want to know, or maybe I hope we never find out. Feel free to message me in the comments below or subscribe if you're interested in hearing more.